Hi.
Hi, I was about to say good morning. Where am I?
Where am I? Who am I? What are we doing here?
What day is it? What country am I in?
Oh, that question I ask all the time. What country am I
Yeah,
in?
right, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Uh,
So many things to think about in this week. Good Lord. So, are you okay with the agenda I sent? Did that sound like it?
Yeah, looks perfect. I have it up right here, somewhere here.
We're right on schedule. 3:45
Good.
Zoom link.
Yeah. And yeah.
Oh, so I was going to put all these links you wanted me to put on there, right?
Right. If you
Should I
could-
just have them posted up here from the
Sure.
get-go?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the questions, I don't know quite whether we're going to use the questions to direct. Mara, you'll moderate the question answer thing, right? Like in terms of if the people don't ask questions.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. So is the chat going just to Lisa or are they public questions?
It's public. It should be
Okay.
public. Yeah.
Do you want me to put those up right now, Nona?
Yeah, I would put
Okay.
everything into the chat. So, oh, actually,
Okay.
just a minute. When you put things into the chat before people are there, they only see what is there after the program starts. So don't put them in.
Oh,
Lisa.
really?
Yeah. When you
Okay, so
join a
maybe-
program, you don't get to see old chats.
Okay, before I'm trying to think if I put it in just a second, okay, and just don't hit send yet, because there's a lot of them.
Sure, that'd be great.
If
And you
I
can, you can keep adding them as the program goes. So don't.
Okay,
feel
yeah.
like you don't get it in the first minute. It matters, but
Now, if I return, I think it's gonna post. Yeah, see it posts when I return. Okay, so
you can.
I'll just have to
put 'em
wait.
in- You can put them in and just copy and paste, copy and paste. I've seen people do that. Just keep copying and pasting, down along during the program. But
Yeah, that's what I think I'm gonna do because, yeah, okay, no
then
problem.
you'll at least.
I don't have to talk, so all I have to do is this.
I think I owe both of you some more Tupperwares as we moved out of the hotel we cleaned out of that. So
I think I got mine.
I think you had one with lemons, a small one with a blue one with lemons.
You
Don't
must
worry
have so
about
much
it. I think it's that throwaway, that like, yeah.
All right. If you're not attached, we won't worry about it.
Not attached.
Yeah. I don't remember what I sent mine in. I think it was something that I didn't expect to get back. So
Okay, well,
whatever you have from me, if you're going to use it, that's great. If you're not going to use it, do not throw it away.
oh, no, we won't do that. But if we're ever allowed to see each other again, we'll try.
Right. Rabbi Shmuley sent me a message that I don't know if you saw that he has to leave in the last 10 minutes. So that last 10 minutes, I think there will be questions for him. So hopefully if so we can try to address his questions first as we do that.
Yep.
And probably you can field some of the the Jew. I feel like you probably got a little bit of a Jewish
I know a few things, but yeah. I'll do my best, but we'll see if we can get those in before he actually exits. That would be ideal.
He's so it's so intense to hear him talk about the issues with mercy for animals.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it just is so powerful. I've heard him speak a few times in different settings.
Yeah.
And I'm just blown away every single time. So
yeah. Well, he really has been a serious activist on this matter. And
he really has. And he always says to me, I'm not so good on the environmental stuff. I know I don't do much. I don't know what he thinks he does. He probably has styrofoam or something, some kind of, because I'm sure they must have to bring in food a lot. And that's one of those, boy, that would break. If my heart could go one place to change something quick, it would be to have an alternative to styrofoam for takeout. We just come home and go, oh, this is awful.
Well, and in COVID, I can't even remember, but in the ECC, everything's disposable now. And, it's just, it's like, oh, I just hate it. But
yeah.
Well, there's that black stuff, but that's plastic and that's not so great either, So
yeah, the styrofoam is just not recyclable and doesn't biodegrade. So the compostable stuff is better, even though I mean, it'll eventually biodegrade, but not quickly, but.
Maury, I love your haircut. I always think
I
it
know,
looks
it's
so
really
cute
cute.
with it
Thank
short.
you. So thank you. So I was on a Zoom call. I was on a class with Rachel Korazim. It was one of my great teachers,
Yes,
and
yeah.
you know, I wasn't able to go that often, but I did go to this on Zoom, and I saw somebody I hadn't seen in like 25 years. It was great. I was like, "Oh my God, how are you?" Blah blah blah. And she said, "Now I remember your hair being red." I was like, "It is red," but I guess the particular angle it was catching was not exactly red. Let's say.
Well, when it's longer, you see more of the.
Yeah. And this, you know, this right here is where the gray comes in. So that's where.
It looks blonde now, Mari. That's
Yeah,
all.
that's it.
Blonde, yeah. So, anything you want me to say about it when I introduce you besides just our revered rabbi who we love so much?
Whatever. Yeah, anything is fine. Yeah.
I was trying to put together how many years it's been, and I really was
can
like
tell you, it's been 18.
8. Oh, this is the year of high.
It is indeed. And it's
Were you 31 when you came?
I was that's impressive. Do you remember that? Or
I was
think you
just,
threw
I
out?
just remembered you were very young, and I couldn't remember exactly, but I remember your 35th birthday,
Oh,
so I
right,
knew it had to be somewhere.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I was 31.
Wow.
I'm 48, and you
Wow,
know,
those numbers are coming. They're adding up here.
I know.
Yes,
I know
yes.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Here is Sharona's
A
coming.
revered
Indeed.
Cantor Emeritus,
Beloved.
yes.
Yes.
It's so much reverence here. There's so many revered people here. Hi, Sharona.
Yep. And she's gone.
You come, easy go. Oh, hello.
Oh, there's
Hi, Marie. Hello, Marie.
Hi, Nona.
You are
Hi.
so prompt. You are always so prompt.
That's impressive.
Welcome.
I have a question, Sharona, since you just came on the chat, can you see anything? Nope, okay.
Oh, that's
So
it.
I'll wait till everybody gets here.
Hi, Marcy.
Hi, hold on. I gotta find my volume and stuff.
All right.
You
There-
look
Actually-
like you're growing lettuce or something.
know.
Like you're in the Midwest or something, or
Marcy
Montana or something.
It's inspiring us.
It's actually Massachusetts. I took that picture in August of 2019.
It's beautiful. And
Beautiful.
green.
Actually, is my sound okay for when I'm talking?
I
Is it
think so, it
okay?
is for me.
Okay. All right. And I can see myself, so I know what I look like. So that's that part. Oh, Kim. Hello, Kim.
See a hand.
Is that your hand or Charlie's hand?
Mhm.
That's Charlie's hand.
Charlie's hand. I thought it might be, but
I'm going to try to change monitors.
aha. You have a very large thumb. That's all I-
So I gotta figure out what I want to, let's see, how's this? So I can,
Marcy, are you retired?
there we go. Now I'm really in the field.
Now you are.
I know you're reclining in the field.
I'm residing in the field. We went to a wedding that was in a house out in the middle of nowhere, and walking out of the house, I looked up and there was the picture, so I took it.
Beautiful.
Look at the sky. It's so beautiful.
So beautiful.
It was really nice.
Oh, this is fun. I see
Charlie.
names I don't recognize. That's very exciting. Charlie, it's good to see you.
It's not you. Need help him.
I wanted to start asking you all questions, and I'm going to wait until I'm supposed to.
But you're supposed to?
Oh, well, I'm just curious how many people saw the film so far.
We saw it.
I saw most of it. and didn't get
Hi,
to.
Kim. Good to see you.
I was telling Jones Eckerly I had watched about 2/3 of it a few days ago, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I couldn't sleep. So I was like, I'll watch the rest. So I went downstairs and I turned it on. And then Malila came downstairs and she was like, what's going on? And she said, can we watch something else? I was like, sure. So we watched God knows what, but it was kind of a cute little bonding moment.
Yeah. I was wondering about watching the film with Ethan. My grandson is a very environmentally oriented kid, and Greta is his heroine. And for a while, we didn't talk about it too much because it's pretty scary information for a child who actually takes information seriously, right? And so, but now it's kind of we're full on. We're in Harry Potter and climate change, Harry Potter, climate change. But we're gonna wizard away the terribleness of climate change if we could.
Well,
Hello,
Ezra,
Rabbi Shmuley.
Ezra, who isn't quite as serious an activist. It was years ago, and I think he got this from Kara, that he was at one of the teachers here somehow said something about McDonald's. I think he was 2 or 3, and he said, "You eat McDonald's? Do you like dead cows?"
So, a product of his environment,
Yes.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to see your values reflected in your children,
Yes.
right?
Shannon is asking if it's okay to record, and
we are planning to record, and generally I would say in the intro to everybody, we're planning to record. So if you don't want to be recorded, turn off your camera. We maybe don't record yet till we say that. I don't know.
that sounds like a good.
It says it's recording.
Yeah, it might want to. I don't know if you want to record this part. I don't think anybody's. We're going to record this and put the recording onto. I think it's been generally on our YouTube, Temple High live streaming YouTube or whatever, whatever it is, Mari, whatever, one of those things. So that would be great. I'll go ahead and officially welcome everybody. It's really fun to see so many faces, and hopefully more people will soon still be joining us. My name is Nona Siegel, and I am here as a representative for the Shamayim Synagogue Vegan Challenge, which our congregation Temple High is participating in this year. We were chosen as one of 7 congregations around the country to participate. We received a small grant to support from Shamayim and Veg Fund. Shamayim is an animal advocacy organization with Jewish animal advocacy, which was started by Rabbi Shmuley Yanklowitz, who's on our program today. And so they are encouraging education and advocacy for switching to a plant-based diet as a way of acting out our ethical beliefs. And so that is what has started this program, this series of programs. And this is our, depending on how we count, this is our 5th program, 4th to 5th program, depending if we count our movie night, where we just told people to go watch the movie. That's might have been an event. It was Havdalah, so we're going to call it an event. And then tonight is really, this is a very exciting program that we are going to go ahead and begin. I want to also just acknowledge, I want to do a land acknowledgement. I'm trying to be very, very conscious about that we are all living on Indigenous people's lands that we took from them. And Temple High is located on the Upper Pima or Acamel O'odham land and the Hohokam land. And we benefit from the incredible cultural diversity of so many tribes in our area, and who did an amazing job of living on this land and not overusing it for all those generations. So we can learn a lot from them. The program is going to be structured. Rabbi Chernow is our moderator, and we're going to talk a little bit about the film. You don't have to have seen the film to participate today or to learn something, but we'll put the link for the film in the chat so that if you want to watch it later, if you didn't get a chance to watch it, or if you want to finish it later, you have an opportunity to do that. Then we're going to have 3 panelists, and Rabbi Chernow is going to introduce each of our panelists. We'll each speak for 10 minutes, and then we will have question and answers afterwards. So please put your question and answers into the chat, and Lisa Gildar is going to kind of watch that, and we will try to honor Rabbi Yankovic has to leave a little bit before the end of the program. So questions for him, we would try to address first so that he has a chance to speak to those. So, and look at all these faces. It's so exciting to see you all and to see people that we haven't seen at other programming. So that's awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and give the Rabbi Chernow the floor, who has been our rabbi now for 18 years. And so what a blessed year this is for you, and too bad we aren't all together celebrating it in person. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nona. It's really wonderful to be here, and I'm grateful to the leadership and those who pushed us a little bit, lovingly pushed us to take on this initiative. It feels like there's a little bit of a vegan and vegetarian revolution happening. And it's exciting to know that some of us have come to this on our own. And I've heard from some of you that maybe you're getting inspired to think about this because of following the trails of your children or even grandchildren who are leading the way. So it's really very exciting. I am not a vegan. I am what I would describe myself as a meat minimalist. And I appreciate the way Nona started this, that we're all working to do better by animals and better by this planet in the steps that we can take. And we appreciate everybody's being here for the conversation, and we'll see where it leads us. I want to say also that Rabbi Koppel heard our personal story that we were out of our home for a little while because of a flood, and we were redoing the floors and all this. And she immediately asked the leadership of our vegan group if they would provide us a meal. And I have to tell you, they did not provide a meal. They provided a mountain of delicious, incredible food that not only did Kara and I love, our kids even ate it. There was a bag this big of desserts baked by Sharona Feller and all kinds of other things. And so it's really, I think that one of the goals of this group is to prove to people that vegan food can be outrageously delicious. And we personally have benefited from that. And we appreciate everybody who did that. So I'm just going to say a quick word about the movie. And if anybody wants to add something that I'm missing, why don't you pop it into the chat and I'll try to make reference to it. I found it very, very compelling. The majority of time in the movie was really spent on the health benefits of eating vegan, and really focused on very, very serious athletes who had changed their diet in order to, had become vegan in their diet, and some of whom were a little bit skeptical when it started, and all of them. Okay, thank you. There's some questions to think about that go along with the movie. And all of them talked about how much stronger they were, how much more endurance they had. Some of them talked about, as they were aging, being able to maintain world-class competition levels long after would be expected. There's a good bit of science in the movie about how the cardiac benefits work, how the muscle building benefits work, and so on and so forth. But these stories were incredibly compelling. We saw everything from a cyclist to football players to boxers to a long distance marathon runner to weightlifters, the guy who was holding the heaviest weight that a human being had ever carried. And all of them were talking about their vegan diets and how it strengthened them, as opposed to what is the stereotype out there that vegans don't get enough protein, they don't have enough energy, they're eating sprouts and berries all day. And they really talked about the rich, full diet. Somebody who was featured for just a second, they didn't interview him, but is I'll hesitate to call him a hero of mine. It's a long story, but Alex Honold is the climber who free climbed El Capitan not recently. And so in the climbing world, he is really a big deal. And I had watched in his other movie, the segment where he suddenly talks about his diet and he's cooking himself this like huge pot of vegetables. And this is a guy who his life quite literally depends on a tremendous amount of strength. At the end of the movie, they do turn a little bit to the animal cruelty issue. They do speak about the environmental issue and the tremendous land use and water use when land is devoted to livestock rather than to growing plants, and also to the animal cruelty issue. And I can't remember his name, but there's a gentleman who really has dedicated his life to preventing poaching in Africa, and he talked about his own realization that if he's going to spend so much time preventing cruelty to animals, he really ought to stop and think about how he was eating them. So it was really very, very compelling. Anything else you want to add about a summary of the movie itself?
I would just add, I think that the audience, the focus on performance versus ethics, and I live in a world of so many like really meta ideas about ethics, and to think about the focus on really your individual performance was was fascinating to me, and I thought that made it really a powerful film for this message.
Yeah, and the narrator talks about his concerns for his father, health concerns for his father, and going on the journey with him, and really feeling much better about his cardiac health and his future together. And those personal stories are very, very moving. So if you haven't caught the movie yet, I encourage you to do that. For now, I'm just going to give a brief introduction to our three speakers, and then they will each say some words, and then I'll keep an eye on the time, and please do go ahead and submit your questions. So Rabbi Dr. Shmuley Yanklowitz, a very, very dear friend of ours personally and of Temple Chai, is the founder and CEO of Shamayim. He is also the president and dean of Valley Beit Midrash. He's an educator, activist, author, and vegan. A recent publication of his is Jewish Veganism and Vegetarianism Studies and New Directions. Dr. Heather Shankman is an interventional cardiologist in Los Angeles. She is a triathlon athlete and a vegan. Her recent publication is The Vegan Heart Doctor's Guide to Reversing Heart Disease, Losing Weight, and Reclaiming Your Life. And finally, Nona Siegel is our family nurse practitioner. She has a bachelor's in conservation of natural resources, and she's an environmental advocate, and is recently, I've seen it happen, exploring a vegan lifestyle. So without further ado, I will turn it over. Shmuley, why don't you take it next?
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here with everyone. I am a huge fan of Temple Chai. I love Temple Chai. In fact, I'm in Temple Chai right now. That's where I spend most of my life, is in Temple Chai, and of Rabbi Mark Chernow, just huge fan and student, and of this great group. I love that you're doing this. I love Shamayim and the Jewish Vegan Movement, and Veg Fund and their partnership, and this opportunity to think about this a little bit with you all over this hour, and hopefully beyond as well. So there's so much to say, and to try to encapsulate anything about the Jewish ethical approach to such issues in 10 minutes is a wild task, but I'm going to do my best, and I look forward to the conversation. So I guess where I would start is the question, what is it that fundamentally makes human beings different from non-human animals? And there's a lot of different ways to approach that. And the most common Jewish question to such a problem is, what is it that makes us B'Tselem Elohim? What does it mean we're created in the image of God? What dimension of humanity is something elevated beyond the rest of creation? What aspect of the human being is fundamentally, as some would say, superior or different or elevated or holy? Some point to cognition. Some point to the capacity for language or speech. Some look at the human potential for moral reasoning. Others look at community building. Some look at the soul, the fact that humans have a soul. And our conclusion on this, what makes a human fundamentally different from non-human animals, will help us to understand what it is we're trying to actualize and what it is that differentiates us from the other. And nonetheless, even if there is a way to distinguish in ways that I think are meaningful, how much should we care about the animal? And here, it seems clear to me from the Jewish mandates that one of the main prescriptions we have is to reduce suffering in the world. There's lots of different ways to reduce suffering, whether it has to do with pastorally, it has to do with tzedakah, to just fulfill people's needs. It has to do emotionally, physically, all these ways. And Rabbi Yisrael Salanter famously says, the great founder of the Musar movement, that my spiritual needs, your physical needs are my spiritual needs. What does it mean to have a spiritual pursuit in Judaism? Not to bring someone else's spirit closer, but rather to address their concrete physical needs. And that's a real insight of the Musar movement, that we are not to accept suffering, but to reject it. And the rejection of suffering is the foundation of Jewish spirituality. And the first mitzvah in the Torah itself is peru urvu, to be fruitful and multiply, right? Which is typically understood as procreation. The Me'am Loez understands it as spiritual creativity, intellectual creativity, not just physical procreation. But we can also suggest in the spirit of the first mitzvah there in Genesis, not only to create new life, but to preserve existing life. And the animals themselves are given the mitzvah of peru urvu, to also preserve and to procreate new life. We share with animals this mandate of preserving the sanctity and dignity of life. And actually go even one step further, the very first verse in the Torah itself is Bereshit bara Elohim et Shamayim v'et haaretz, that God creates, God acts, which is why I believe the most fundamental vehicle of Judaism, understood in the most pluralistic of ways, is the deed. That more important than thought, and thought is really important, more important than spirituality, more important than belief, is what we do in the world. Because what we do indicates our character, indicates our inner world, what we're about. So God acts, and we are to emulate that and act. And so the question is, if I believe suffering is the greatest problem of the human experience, of all of the experience of creation, what will I do in response to that? Not only how will I combat suffering, but how will I also not be complicit in suffering? Whether it has to do with sexism, homophobia, racism, complicit in ethical consumption of genocide, right, that exists today. It has to do with the environment, has to do with animals. How will I not be complicit as such? So let's step back and look at the 4 different eras as to how the Jewish tradition, as I understand it, wrestles with our relationship to the consumption of animals. The first era is Gan Eden. Gan Eden in the Garden of Eden is a vegan diet. It's clear, it's a vegan diet. It says, in fact, it says Tov Meod. It says in Genesis 1:31, right after humans and animals are told to only eat only eat plants, that it doesn't say God said it was good. It now says Tov Meod. V'yar Elohim et kol hasher asa v'hine Tov Meod v'hi erev v'boker yom hashishi. The God now says it's Tov Meod. Now Meod is an interesting word. Very good, very good. And in the legal context of the Torah, when it says V'nishmartem me'od l'nafshotechem, be careful about your lives, which is the Torah mandate for health in Deuteronomy 4:15, we're obligated to preserve our health. This is the only time me'od is used in a mandate, right? We saw here in Genesis it's used descriptively, and here's the one time it's used prescriptively, which has to do with human health. So descriptively, me'od is used to describe only eating plants, and then prescriptively it's used towards guarding human health. And so the very first era in Jewish thought is Garden of Eden, a vegan diet. Then when does that change? The Talmud says after the flood. After the flood, the rabbis explain that humans had a need for bloodshed. Humans are fundamentally violent, they argued, at least in that time. And so rather than kill other humans, take out your need for bloodthirst on animals. So yes, now in the second era, you're allowed to kill animals only for korbanot, for offerings to God, which you can also eat as part of the offering. That's the second stage. Third stage is kashrut. Kashrut means you can kill animals wherever you want, as long as you do it in a certain way that's going to try to minimize suffering and sar balei chayim, needless pain to animals. And then it doesn't have to be a sacrificial offering. You can eat it for yourself. That's the third stage. And now I argue we're in the fourth stage, the fourth era, which is the era of factory farming. The era of factory farming, which is a fundamental game changer in terms of how we think about our food sources, how we think about the way animals are killed. My grandfather was a butcher, right? And what it means to have an animal in your backyard, what it means to have a relationship to an animal, what it means to move beyond the type of experience. I don't have to go into graphic detail of what happens in factory farms today. I assume many of you know, most of you know. And so those are the 4 eras: Garden of Eden, vegan diet. Then we go to the after the flood, where there's sacrificial eating of animals. The 3rd era is kashrut, where the esophagus and trachea are sliced at the same moment to try to minimize suffering. And then the 4th is the reality of factory farming, where I think in kashrut, there's not a mandate to not eat animals. It's very clear. You can eat animals as long as you do it in a certain way. And then we get to a new era where it is virtually impossible to eat animals in a way that is not connected to something atrocious. And so those are the 4 eras, as I would argue. And then I would suggest that the greatest amount of suffering we see on the planet today, quantitatively and qualitatively, is in the animal world, as we see in factory farming. Quantitatively, we are dealing with 10 billion land animals every year in the US, globally about 50 to 70 billion, that's excluding fish, 50 to 70 billion, right? And so when we say in the prophets, the wolf will lie down with the lamb in the Messianic era, the question is, will we lie down? Will we lie down? We are the wolf. We are the wolf in today's kingdom. The human beings are the ones who destroy the planet. We are the predators towards all of life. And the Messianic era is actually upon us. When will we lie down? And so one other thing about the eras, and I'm aware I only have 2 or 3 minutes left, and I look forward to our conversation, is the Akedah. How many of you love the story of the binding of Isaac? How many of you are troubled by the story of the binding of Isaac? How many of you? Okay, so let me say one thing about it. So to me, the binding of Isaac is a progressive story. It's a very progressive story, because what it says over there is that the world believed in human sacrifice, and then God intervenes right in the very final moment to say, never again will you kill a human being in the name of God. So this is a progressive story, as that it shows a transition historically between human sacrifice as something normalized towards a divine intervention to say, never again will you kill a human in my name. And who is killed instead is killed an animal. So the progress goes from human sacrifice to animal sacrifice. Actually fascinating, there's a Hasidic thinker named Rabbi Avraham Korman of the 20th century who says what was the real test of Avraham was not whether he would kill his son, but whether he was willing to kill an animal in the name of God. He says the text, there's no proof in the text that Avraham had killed an animal yet in his life. Was he willing to kill an animal in the name of God? Not would he kill his son. That was the real test, which I find to be an interesting reread of the text. Let me close with just this last thought in regards to modern thought. Jane Goodall was in town 2 years ago. I don't know if anyone of you went to her talk. I was very moved by her and meeting her. And she said, we haven't inherited the land from our parents. We've stolen it from our children. And she talked about how her spirituality for her work in biodiversity helped move her towards the tapestry of life, the interconnectivity of all life, an elevated spiritual consciousness that we are all part of the animal kingdom, and we're never separate from it ultimately. And we had Paul Mendes-Floor, who's the great scholar of Buber in town recently in Valley Beit Midrash just before the pandemic. And he talked about how Buber's I and thou in the human experience was in many ways born between the dialogical encounter with horses and with cats. How, and this is also true empirically with young children, how empathy can start for young children with animals, oftentimes before humans. That's to say, someone might not have empathy for their little brother or sister, but they love their puppy, right? And so that's a case for animal companions with young children. And also Levinas. Levinas talks about how in a concentration camp, a dog looked him in the eye in a way that no Nazi had looked him in the eye. He said the dog was the last Kantian in Nazi Germany who saw him as a human being in a way that the other Nazis couldn't see. You can also look at Rachel Adler's recent book, Mysticat, where she writes there about mysticism and the relationship to her cat. So let me just close with that thought that I believe we are in a transitional period right now in Jewish thought, in a new era that is born not only of the birth of responsibility with having the state of Israel, the birth of responsibility in a post-Holocaust theology, and the birth of responsibility in the amount of power we have in ethical consumerism to take responsibility for human health, responsibility for the planet, responsibility for animal suffering in the world, and for our interconnected spirituality that emerges in a pandemic world, where we see pandemics are all the more common in relationship to the suffering of animals. That cruelty of animals are actually the source, as many scholars have shown, for the creation of new pandemics, and what that means for public health in regards to what we eat. I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Shmuley. Beautiful, really, really important teachings. Some Torah that's familiar to us and some that is really a new read. And I so appreciate that. So thank you. Thank you so much. Really, really important. Let's go and turn to Nona.
Hello, thank you. I'm going to reintroduce myself as a panelist. I'll pretend I didn't introduce myself yet. So my name is Nona Siegel, and I'm a rancher's daughter. I was born in Montana, and my father was a cattle rancher. So like Rabbi Shmuley's father, grandfather, who was a butcher, I come from people who were familiar with animals and familiar with raising animals for food. My father's cattle were grass-fed. Before that was like a trendy concept, but they lived on pastures and until they went to the feedlot, which was just a few months before they were fattened up and butchered, but they had a pretty good life. I really developed a great affinity for natural spaces growing up in Montana, although I also saw the destruction of mining and the tremendous destruction that humans can do to land. And I never could understand why people thought they had a right to do that. Who were we as humans to take this incredible earth around us and just destroy it just because of private property? That was just always problematic to me. I think that, my dad really taught me a lot about being in relationship to the earth, and it was just always kind of a part of me that I can't say where it came from. I did get a bachelor's degree from UC Berkeley in conservation of natural resources because of that interest. That was in 1975. It wasn't really clear how to have a career doing that. It was a very different time than now. So jealous of people who get to go to ASU, to GEOS, to the Global Institute of Sustainability, and learn how to actually take their skills and save the planet. I'm very jealous, but I decided to become a nurse and to work in the field of family planning because I really felt like humans consume, and we don't need to be more of us than there need to be of us. And the ones that are here should be ones that are loved and wanted and coming into a home of people who love them. So that was a passion of mine. And so I became a nurse practitioner. I worked at Banner Family Medicine, went to ASU for that training. My husband reminds me. And I worked at Banner in teaching family medicine residents for 25 years and just retired a couple years ago. So for the last 5 years, I have been on the board of Arizona Interfaith Power and Light, who Mari introduced me to at a women's retreat. And I have been engaged with AZIPL since then, which is a faith-based and interfaith organization, faith-based response to climate change, to help us all act on our pretty much all faith traditions have a lot of language around protecting the natural world and saving it for future generations. And yet, obviously, we all don't act on that. So Temple High has been involved with AZIPL, certainly since I've been involved, and hopefully we'll continue that partnership. So in terms of the facts around the environmental impact of factory farming, or food production in general, it is just massive. And there, as Rabbi Shmuley said, hard to get it into 10 minutes. It is very hard to give a quick version of the impact of our food system. First of all, the human population has grown so enormously. We're at I think 9 billion now. I looked it up and now I don't remember, but it was a couple billion when I was in graduate school, and it's, lots more billion now, and going to, we're so far past what's predicted to be the carrying capacity of our planet that I think 2 to 3 billion is what's thought to be a sustainable human population, maybe 1.5 to 2. So we're about 3 or 4 times past that at this point, with many countries, and you can't blame them, wanting to have the quality of life that Americans have had in our last several hundred years, in terms of what you call quality of life, with lots of food and lots of things, and lots of plastic and lots of disposables, and lots of people want to have a life like that. So we are exporting our American way of life all over the world, which is a completely unsustainable model. So hopefully we're all beginning to learn to look at our indigenous neighbors and look at how they lived on the land and figure out how we could model our behavior on them and what their traditional knowing can teach us. A couple of sources, because I won't be able to give you all the information. One of the books that I find super helpful, and I'm going to do that thing that people really are annoying when they do, Food is the Solution. This is a cookbook that has about a third of the book is an introduction of facts and advocacy from so many people, from, Paul McCartney to just all kinds of amazing chefs and all sorts of people talking about plant-based diet and the reason to do it and the environmental implications of changing. We Are the Weather, Jonathan Safran Foer, a nice Jewish boy who has written a lot about, he also wrote Eating Animals. He has written a lot about the impact of the food system and on our planet. And then Drawdown, which is a really interesting book, especially for those of you who are very solution oriented and are interested in both the engineering side and not just the sort of ethical and idea side of environmental solutions, but it's about how to draw carbon out of the atmosphere, how to actually counteract carbon, the effect of climate, of greenhouse gases. So in in Drawdown, one of the biggest advocacy points is changing the way we eat and changing the way we produce our food. So you can start in a lot of places. The film does, I think, an excellent job of sort of pointing out to us that, we need to eat protein, we need to eat calories in food, and the plant makes the food, makes the food source, makes the protein, makes the energy, and then we could just eat that, and then that would be a very direct thing, simple thing. The other way that we've done it is we let the animals eat the plants. The animals turn the plants into protein, and then we eat the animals. And that is extremely inefficient if you're just trying to feed all those 7 or 8 billion people that are on the planet now. And the consequences of that is that you have to feed the animal, you have to process, you have to grow food for the animal, you have to feed the animal, you have to house the animal, you have to deal with the manure, the gases that the animal produces, the debris, the waste, the antibiotics that are fed to them, and then you have to clean up the process, and you have to kill all those animals. So there's just a lot that happens if you decide that the animals are the place you're going to get your calories from. That's not even considering the ethical or the health issues. So in terms of the land used, I think we all in this COVID time probably couldn't help but notice as California burned this summer. Also, the Amazon was burning, and it has been burning for quite a few years. And that destruction of rainforest, the deforestation, is a hugely driven by creating pasture land for cattle or open land to raise crops for cattle. So there is the biggest driver for deforestation on the planet is feeding cattle. And the other issue with that is, all the models on climate change are based on a certain way we've used the planet. And now we have these fires letting a huge, enormous amount of carbon out into the climate, into the atmosphere that wasn't predicted necessarily at this rate, this early in this process. And the Amazon has been what they call the lungs of the planet. So it has processed a lot of that CO2. So we're burning down the trees that we were counting on to save us. So that's a big problem. Another thing too, 70, I want just a number on that, 70% of the Amazon, of the previously forested parts of the Amazon are now pasture. So that's just, it's not a small effect, it's a huge effect. Water is another thing to look at. One hamburger takes 2,400 liters of water to produce. And I'm assuming that's a 1/4 pound hamburger. Maybe it's a 1/3 of a pound. Maybe it's a 1/2 pound hamburger. I'm not quite sure. That's a lot of water. And that's what it takes to grow the crops and feed the cattle and clean up after the cattle. And so in our world where we know water is so limited, that I think speaks to us profoundly. That's a lot of water for one hamburger. So, and the plant, the numbers, the factor, it's by a factor of almost 1,000, I think, the difference between what it takes to grow oats and what it takes to grow a cow in terms of the production cost in water for a portion of for us to consume. Greenhouse gas production, cattle give off much more powerful greenhouse gases, methane and nitrous oxide, which are much more impactful on the environment. Animal agriculture accounts for more greenhouse gases than the transportation sector. And meat and dairy production use 1/3 of the Earth's fresh water. These concentrated animal feeding operations that the factory farming creates, the water and air pollution that are the consequences of those operations are so destructive to their communities. They're really, really problematic in terms of the health effects. And so there's much more to say, and I see that Dr. Shankman is here, so I do not want to, I wasn't quite sure if I was gonna have to fill in for that space, but I am gonna stop talking now, even though there's so much more to say. And at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about programs that are coming up and ways to help you make this change if you're interested. Thank you.
So great. We're going to turn it over to Dr. Shankman next. Thank you so much for joining us. Based on your bio, you look like somebody who could have been featured on this film with your athletic life and your commitment to veganism and your health expertise. So please, if you would share some wisdom with us.
All right. Thank you kindly for the nice introduction. Actually, it's funny you should mention that because back in late 2010, I was contacted by James Wilkes, and he was telling me about this project that he was taking on. He wanted to show plant-based diets and how athletes can thrive on a plant-based diet. So he actually filmed me. He came with me to an endurance event that I was doing. It was a half Ironman trail run, and he filmed me and interviewed me. And then a couple of years later, I heard from him, and he said, you know, this is turning into something a whole lot bigger, and you know, I thought it was great interviewing you. But I've got Olympians, I've got NFL, so I don't think we're going to be using you. And I said, you know, if this can reach a bigger audience, okay. So it was not featured in the film. A little bit about me. I am a cardiologist. I'm in practice in Tarzana, California, which is in the Los Angeles area. I have a solo practice. I am plant-based. I have been plant-based since 2005. My initial intent, or when I went plant-based, was more for the animals. In fact, I was vegetarian from when I was in high school in 1991. And my brother was the first vegetarian in the family, my younger brother of all people. He, 10 years old, went to school, and in science class, they were dissecting chicken wings, and that grossed him out. So that's a chicken, I don't want to do this. And I thought he was crazy. I'm 3 years older, and I used to tease him because I was kind of a mean older sister. Oh, we're going to go meet at Taco Bell and eat lots of meat. And I thought that was hilarious, teasing him. I started reading more about the animals, and at 16, I went vegetarian. My entire family basically all went vegetarian around the same time. In 2005, 13 years later, I was in my cardiology fellowship training. And I learned more about what the animals go through. So it wasn't just a matter of eating the animals, but it was how the animals were treated to get their animal products. So that in order to make more milk, you'd have to impregnate cows. The cows' boy babies would become veal and lead very horrible short lives, and milk cows are treated. And with the hens that lay eggs and the small spaces that they're in, and the fact that they're beef without anesthesia, just all of these things just horrified me. And I thought, if I'm going to be vegetarian for the animals, if I'm for the animals, I'm vegan for the animals. But around the same time as I was in a cardiology fellowship training program to become a cardiologist, I was also learning about what plant-based diets do for heart health. So I had learned about the studies of Dean Ornish and Caldwell Esselstyn. And in short, what their studies is, they looked at people who had heart disease, who had known coronary artery disease, which is plaque within the arteries, who had had heart attacks, who had had horrible events that needed stents, bypass, and whatnot, and put them on essentially plant-based diets to see how they would do. In summary, those who were on plant-based diets actually did a whole lot better than those who maintained the standard recommendation of a quote-unquote low-fat diet and low-fat dairy and eat chicken. The kind of generic advice that one thinks you're supposed to get if you have heart disease. The people who followed more plant-based diets did better, had fewer heart attacks, had fewer needs for stents, for surgery on their hearts. In addition, there have been studies done since then. One large study looked at the Seventh-day Adventist population. The Seventh-day Adventist religion focuses on a vegetarian style of diet. And they've looked at people who adhere more to a more vegetarian or vegan diet compared to those who adhere to a more omnivorous standard American diet. And those who eat more plant-based actually live longer, had fewer heart problems, were less likely to have hypertension or high blood pressure, were less likely to have diabetes, were less likely to be obese. So based on that, and many, many other studies have demonstrated really good outcomes for plant-based diets. Plant-based diets are actually, even according to the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, a plant-based diet is appropriate at all stages of life. They have a position paper on this that was published a couple of years ago. So is there any person who theoretically has to have animal products? And the answer is no. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, they are not a vegetarian organization by any stretch of the imagination. And they state that plant-based diets can be appropriate at all stages of life, from pregnancy, breastfeeding, childhood, adulthood, into the elderly stages. I can tell you from my own experience, I recently, like 17 months ago, I gave birth to my daughter. And I was plant-based throughout my entire pregnancy. I know some people have cravings for things, and anecdotally you hear about some people craving meat. I had nothing of the sort. I ate how I normally ate, just a little bit more because I was growing a little person inside my belly. And my daughter, at 17 months old, she has been essentially exclusively vegan, plant-based from birth, with the obvious exception, of course, of breast milk. And I am actually still breastfeeding her, and have been breastfeeding on a plant-based diet. She's growing fantastically on her plant-based diet. She is at the 90th percentile of height and the 70th percentile of weight. But again, I'm 5'9.5", so I suppose that would make sense that she would be tall, but she's certainly thriving on a plant-based diet. One thing that the Game Changers movie touched on that I loved, and I loved seeing all these various athletes, from NFL athletes to Dotsie Bosch, who was one of the oldest Olympians to be on a cycling track team, and to hear about how they noticed that when they trained and when they recovered, that they recovered faster and better on a plant-based diet compared to those of their teammates who ate more omnivorous diets. And I can tell you from my own experience, I've been doing triathlons for years. I've done 2 Ironman distance triathlons. I've done century cycling rides. I've done sprint Olympic half Ironman distance triathlons. And an Ironman triathlon is a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, followed by a 26.2 mile run. It's an all-day event, and you have about 17 hours to do it. It's a long event. I've done all of these things on a plant-based diet, and I can vouch for what's said in the movie. I've always recovered faster than my teammates. I did Ironman Boulder in 2015, and you know, days later, I was in the pool swimming laps, feeling fantastic. So I'm trying to think what else you might want me to touch on.
Yeah, I think that's great. That is super helpful. Thank you, and great to hear your personal reflections from both your professionally and from your personal life. And we wish only blessings to your amazing daughter. I see one question. I'm not sure if that's for you particularly or for others. Is plant-based diet vegan, or does it also? I think does vegetarian also count?
You can feel that one if you'd like. Is that okay? All right, great. So plant-based diet is a type of vegan diet. So to be clear, vegan is no animal products whatsoever. No meat, no dairy, no eggs, no honey, no fish. Plant-based is vegan, is a whole unprocessed diet. So for example, a glass of Pepsi is vegan, potato chips are vegan, Twizzlers are vegan, all sorts of delicious junk food, and you can find just about a vegan form of every kind of cookie, ice cream, and whatnot. Those are not whole, unprocessed or minimally processed foods. So that is what plant-based is. Plant-based is vegan, whole, and minimally processed.
Thank you. That is very helpful. I did not know that definition. And so just to follow up on that, the Beyond Burger, that's out in a plant-based diet.
Beyond Meat or Impossible Burger, I will admit that they are delicious. A very rare occasion. By strict definition, they are not plant-based. They are vegan. There actually was a recent study that came out. I don't have the particulars about it, but it was sponsored by the company that makes Beyond Meat. So you got to kind of take it for a grain of salt. They actually substituted Beyond Meat burgers for regular burgers and looked at cholesterol panels, and they found that the people who were eating the Beyond Meat burgers in place of the meat burgers a little bit better with their cholesterol panels. So that said, I'm not a purist about diet. I'm not going to flog somebody because they're eating healthy and like one night they went out to dinner and had a Beyond Burger. But in general, those should not be daily occurrences.
Thank you for that. I just want to, Dr. Shankman, your sound is a little echoey, so I don't know if you can maybe come a little closer, but somebody did just ask if I can just restate your answer to the plant-based question. And you'll tell me if I did this correctly, but vegan is eliminating animal products and byproducts. Plant-based is really ensuring that all foods are plant-based. So Dr. Shankman's examples were Pepsi, potato chips, processed foods, things that may technically be vegan, but they would not be included in this term plant-based diet.
Mm-hmm.
Other
I think I answered Barbara's question.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question okay?
Other questions? Willa, let me see if I can, I think you'll have to unmute.
Trying to unmute. Yes, it's funny because as Rabbi Mari was asking the question she did, I was typing my question. And, I've heard that maybe you should have, like, you're guided to not have more than 1 or 2 of those alternative, I'll just call it fake meat for right now, or chicken, any of those products more than once or twice a week. And my own commentary on that is, yes, they're very good, very good. But I look at all the ingredients in there, and I'm from the viewpoint of eating naturally, as close as you can to naturally, not processed food. So, but yes, you answered it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's turn to Willa. Did you have a question?
Oh, well, I was just typing it in, but if I could ask for it, as a longtime member of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, but I had been retired for a few years. I haven't kept up on it. I've been semi-vegetarian for many years, but what is the latest research on calcium sources for vegan children once they stop breastfeeding? I know there are lots of vegetables, but how much can they eat of the, volume wise?
A really good question. And I think that dairy is not pushed as much on children or toddlers as much as it was in the past. There are a lot of really good calcium sources that I make sure that my daughter gets. And granted, my daughter is not going to eat a kale salad. That's simply not going to happen. But she loves tofu. Tofu is full of calcium. I make her a smoothie every morning. I sneak a few carrots, and this morning I snuck a little piece of broccoli in there for her too, along with the fruit that I threw in there and some oats. I make that with an unsweetened soy milk, which has plenty of calcium as well. And as you know, like leafy greens, lentils also have some calcium as well. So it's easy enough in a varied diet to make sure that children and toddlers get the calcium that they need.
Well, I wonder though about the processed, the soy milk and the oat milk and all of those. Aren't they very processed? And that isn't exactly right for the environment, is it? In other words, I guess I'm making an argument for dairy products, small amounts, low fat, for growing children.
Okay. I don't think that they're necessary for children. And in terms of processing to create soy milk and tofu, my understanding is that that's not a terribly intensive process. Those are considered processed foods, but they're certainly minimally processed. If you think about the resources that go into creating dairy products, I mean, it's a lot of water, a lot of land used, a lot of methane released into the air. Yeah. That certainly is not a benign process to the environment.
You're starting to convince me.
I'm going to read through. We've had a number of questions in the chat. I'm going to read them all. And our panelists are all, and many of them are, I think, directed toward Dr. Shankman and the medical questions, but if anybody else would like to weigh in. So for those of us that are dipping our toes in the water with plant-based diets, at what level of participation does there appear to be health benefits? I think there was a little information on the film that was a little sobering about that. It just takes one glass of milk, for example, to throw some things maybe into a different category. Next question, do you track your macros and how much protein do you recommend on a daily basis? Dr. Shankman, what do you think about tofu? What about vitamins and supplements? This distinction between vegan versus plant-based is usually described as vegan versus whole food plant-based. Most vegans consider a Beyond Burger to be plant-based. It's just not whole foods plant-based. Okay, thank you. Finally, if someone has food allergies that include foods that are plant-based like peas and corn, will changing to plant-based diets change that? So I don't know that we're going to get to all of those. I think we've got about 3 minutes left. So Dr. Shankman, you want to take a stab at a few of them?
Okay, sure. Where should I start?
Whatever moves you.
I'll start with the allergy one. I think it's feasible to follow a plant-based diet even if you do have some allergies to things. I mean, one of my friends locally has like a list of allergies that he pulls out of his pocket. Like anytime he goes to a restaurant that's like 10 or 15 products long, includes mushrooms and I think soy and peanuts anyways, and he seems to thrive on a plant-based diet. So There are a lot of options. You know, even if you're allergic to soy, and there are people who are allergic to soy or don't consume it for various reasons, who can do perfectly fine eating plant-based. There's a long list of questions. I've already forgotten some of them.
How about supplements, vitamins and supplements?
Excellent question. So B12, if you're on a true plant-based diet, you should be supplementing B12 because B12 is not found naturally in plant foods. It's grown by bacteria in the ground. The animals eat the bacteria on the ground. We wash our food off, so all of that dirt comes off, and we clearly shouldn't be eating dirt. So a B12 supplement is definitely appropriate for those on a plant-based diet. Vitamin D may also be reasonable, but certainly check with your doctor, get your vitamin D levels checked. Vitamin D deficiency, even carnivores to vegans, is pretty prevalent, even in sunny places like Southern California, where I am.
Yeah, that always surprises me how much vitamin D deficiency we have here in Arizona as well. I know, yeah, please, Nona.
I was just going to say, I would like to also make a plug for eating local, eating plant. If you are going to eat meat, try to find meat that's certified humane in terms of being raised, which is not that there isn't lots of room for espionage and all of those categories. But if you are looking for local growers, you're supporting your local food system, eating whole foods, eating, as we've talked about, there's a lot of benefit to that, both socially and in terms of environmental justice issues. The ethical component of the food system isn't just the animals that are killed, but the people that work to produce the food that's made, and how that land is taken, how the companies get the land. And, there's just a lot of issues of social justice in a lot of aspects of everything we buy, but certainly in food. So I think it's very easy to think, if this was all going on and it's so bad for us physically, it's so bad for the planet, how come it's so cheap and available and there isn't more uproar? How come more people don't know about this? And so it must not really be true, or, really, but I think we delude ourselves so many times in so many ways. It's hard to read the details about the animal farming because it's horrific. And so you just don't want to read it because you don't want to know. But it doesn't mean it doesn't happen just because you don't know it. And, all that plastic floating around the middle of the ocean, our styrofoam containers that come home with us, we don't want to look at that and think that that's part of where that's going to go, but that's where that's going to go. It doesn't break down. It's here. Once it's been made, it's here. And so it might go to a landfill, but lots of times it's hauled away and put into the ocean. So I think I would just encourage people, in terms of the ethics of your decision making, to think deeply about, when you buy things, do you need it? When are you going to consume it? Because about 40% of our food that we take home, we throw away in the United States. What was the process? Is this company that's making this product? Yes, you might have to pay a little more for it because they're treating their producers and their employees. They're paying maybe a decent wage, and maybe they're doing the due diligence to have a sustainable operation. That's going to cost more money. And so if I feel like we as Americans, we just always sometimes look at what's the cheapest and how can we get it quick and what tastes the best. And we really need to have an ethical lens as we look at all of our choices, both food and other kinds of products.
So we are coming to the conclusion. I'm going to turn it back to Nona in just a moment. One fact that seems clear to me is that, if you will, there is a great appetite for continuing this conversation. I think that people would stay and ask questions for another hour if we could. So Dr. Shankman, we're going to invite you back, in addition to Rabbi Shmuley and Nona, certainly. And I am grateful to our panelists. I'm grateful to the organizers of this event. I'm grateful to all of you for your questions. It has really been informative and enlightening. So thank you all very much for being here, and let's keep seeing what we can do to heal the planet and stop some suffering and take good care of ourselves. Nona, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Lisa Gildar, who's on the call, and also Joan Zeckerly, who was not feeling well and couldn't join us today, who did the majority of the organizing for this event. So I really appreciate all the effort that they've put into it. And the panelists, thank you so much for your participation. I think it's always just the beginning. We just get started and then don't want to end. We are really encouraged we really want to encourage you to continue exploring, and if you're interested in making steps toward a more plant-based diet, we would love to help you in whatever way you want. So if you are interested in any personal mentoring from any of us that are trying to do this ourselves, we're certainly willing to do that. So just contact, I think my email is the one that's on the Temple High website, or just contact the synagogue and they'll get you in touch with me. Shamayim, the Jewish animal rights organization, is sponsoring a 22-day vegan challenge. If you want to, turn over your 2021 new leaf and see how to eat better for your health and for the world, they associate it with Tu B'Shvat, and they don't quite have the details up on their website yet, but they've been sending us information about it. So they're very close to posting that. And so they will coach you and offer recipes and give you lots of information and encouragement if you want to try a 22-day vegan challenge. I did it last year at Tu B'Shvat with their encouragement, and I decided, how hard could it be to do something for 22 days? I don't want you to be discouraged if you decide to do it and you fail. I don't know that I had one whole day of any of the 22 days that I felt like I actually did it right all the way. And I tried very hard to be forgiving to myself. I think you don't have to be a purist. Americans eat meat 3 times a day. And so in every meal, average American eats meat and dairy products. So there's so much room to say, I'm going to leave out one meal, or I'm going to leave out one day, meatless Mondays, or I'm going to, there's so much room to make a change. So don't feel like you have to be perfect by any means. Any change makes a difference. The next program that we're going to have for our vegan challenge series is on Tu B'Shvat. We're going to do a Tu B'Shvat Seder that's part of Shabbat services on January 30th. And we are going to, if you sign up and want to do it, we are going to have a little bag of all the treats. We're trying to figure out some way to spend a little money from this grant because we can't be together and feed you. So we're going to make a little goodie bag of nuts and fruits for the Tu B'Shvat Seder that we could have experienced together during services, if virtual services. So if you want to do that, watch for the flyer on that. And then on February 4th, for the women's retreat, we are going to have a vegan challah baking event where people who are challah bakers will make the challah ahead of time. And again, you can come to the synagogue, pick up on Thursday a goodie bag for the women's retreat, and that will include all kinds of interesting things. But one thing that will be with it will be a challah. And I think Sharona Feller might be wanting to say something about that, or not.
Just real quickly, on that night, Rabbi Mari and I will be the great chefs creating wonderful culinary delights.
Ooh, such a tease.
Yeah, it is.
Getting into Zoom.
So thank you all for coming. We will put this recording on the Temple High YouTube channel. So I'm not quite sure how long it takes for that to happen, but it will be there in a day or two or something. And so if you have friends that wanted to come, or I know a lot of my friends that I had invited that were not Temple members were having trouble getting in on the link that I had sent that we were using. So there might be other people who are interested who want to see it. So we will definitely post that for those. And so anybody have any burning last minute things they need to say before we wrap up? Thank you so much to Rabbi Shmuley and to Dr. Shankman and Rabbi Mari. It's just great to be together.
Thank you all so very much, and we'll continue the great work. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.